William Shakespeare wrote that the private wound is the deepest wound. Today on Growing Hope, we will be talking about how we can choose to reveal the wound so that we can promote the healing we need so that we can get the balance we want for our lives.
It's time for Growing Hope, the show determined to grow up hearts open to pursue the extraordinary. Because you are extraordinary! And now, live from a little cabin in the woods, nestled along Big Spring Creek, it's your host, Kathryn Lang.
Hello and welcome to Growing Hope, where we are laying a solid foundation for a balanced life. I am Kathryn Lang. I am your dream igniter and possibility believer because I know you can. And I would love to connect with you more to help you define your unique way. You can connect with me at www.snarkyrainbows.com. Now, we started down this path for building a balanced life with a focus on admitting the problem. You have to admit your problem if you're going to find your way around it. As long as you continue to hide the truth, you will not be in a position to create the life that you want to live. You have to admit the problem so you can make the necessary adjustments you need to get to where you want to be. Today, we're going to be taking one more step towards this balance by focusing on the healing process. We're going to specifically be talking about how wound exposure is essential for healing. But wound exposure is going to be different things for different people, and it's going to be different things for different wounds. Now, not too long ago, a friend of mine who happens to be a hospice nurse was dealing with a wound exposure situation with her daughter who had received an IV earlier in the day. And the daughter was emphatic that she needed the bandage for her arm to heal. Now, the nurse mother wanted to remove it because she understood that the bandage was just there to stop the bleeding. So my friend offered up all the facts about why the bandage was there and how exposing the place could help it heal faster, but the daughter would not give in. She needed the bandage, not just today, but possibly for several days. And her mother finally broke down and said, "Trust me, I'm a nurse." It was her trump card. Well, instead of accepting what her mother had to say, the daughter was not even fazed by the facts that her mom offered. Instead, what she did was say, "I know you're a nurse and all, but let's face it, all of your patients die." Leave it to our children to blow all of our logical facts right out of the water with just a little shift in perspective. It's kind of like when I told my son that he couldn't eat the sucker he had just picked up off the ground. And he did. And he said, "Yes, I can." We see things differently. But despite the creative view of the daughter, my nursing friend was right. There is healing power in exposing a wound. It's true with physical wounds, but it's especially true of those life wounds, those wounds that have been torn into the heart or into the mind. When we leave things to fester in the dark, in the corner recesses of our hearts and our minds, then those things tend to breed infection, and that infection will spread, which means that the areas of our life that were fine and dandy, they're not so much anymore. They're going to become overwhelmed with the weight of the infection. True healing begins with wound exposure. So you're going to have to acknowledge the wound. It's right there, so pretending it's not right there won't help. Then you have to clean the wound, clear out all that dirt and grime that creates the potential for infection. Then treat the wound, and each wound needs to be treated according to its unique properties. You don't put a cast on a skinned knee, and you don't put a band-aide on a broken arm. Then you protect the wound, but you don't want to get overprotective because that can cause more issues. And finally, you want to maintain the wound. Keep the wound clean, clear, and protected until it has time to heal. We all have wounds because life is messy that way. Some of the wounds have happened because of our stumbles or our missteps. Some of the wounds have happened because we zigged when we should have zagged, and some of the wounds were infected or affected us accidentally by someone else or on purpose. But no matter how the wounds happened, they need time to heal or they will make balance impossible. No matter what caused the wound, where the wound is, or even how we feel about the wound, until we expose the wound and begin the healing process, we cannot pursue the life that we want to live. We cannot live up to our potential when we are injured and down a bit. Wounds will happen. Trust me, I have 3 boys, so I've learned a thing or two about wounds. Now, we've been blessed that the physical wounds that we have had to deal with were few and far between. And most of the wounds that we had to deal with were relatively minor. You know, from playing Dodge Rock, which is never a good idea. But surprisingly, it was the mental, emotional, and spiritual wounds that hit the hardest on my boys. And hit hardest on me as a mother, because there's only so much you can do to protect your boys from the attacks of others. I would never have expected that with boys we were going to run into that, but I should have, because it turns out that life will hit anyone if it finds an opening. Dealing with the physical wounds can seem simple enough. I mean, after all, you can get a first aid book that tells you how to deal with most of the wounds. It's a written guide of what to do and when to do it. But the heart issues are going to be different. Those wounds are treated differently based on what caused them, who is carrying them, and when the wound was inflicted. Each person is unique, and each wound is unique. So treating the wounds will be uniquely unique. But despite all of these unique qualities, there are some basic procedures you can utilize and then personalize for dealing with the healing process. The first thing you need to do is acknowledge the wound. Tell someone about the hurt. Talk to someone about the hurt. Inspect the wound. Now, staying positive is important. I believe in the power of words, but acknowledgement is not negative. Now, if it crosses over into fixation, it can become negative, but just acknowledgement is okay. My husband would wake me up in the middle of the night screaming in pain. It didn't wake him, mind you, just me. When I would ask him about it, he would just shrug it off and go on, or he would mumble something about, well, I guess I'm just sore from work. But after several restless nights, for me, not for him, because apparently screaming out in the middle of the night does not affect my husband. It shouldn't surprise me, because he's like a parrot. If you cover his head, he'll go to sleep. But after all these nights, he finally went to the doctor. He acknowledged that there was a wound. And once he acknowledged it, he was in a position to begin the healing process. Before you can do anything to heal yourself or to find the healing you need, you have to acknowledge the wound. The second thing to do about a wound is to clean it out. It's rarely the wound that does the most damage. It's the stuff that gets into the wound, opening that wound, opening the dirt, the grime, the germs. Those are the things that wreak havoc on us. Too often you see the results of that havoc and not the stuff that caused it. So by the time you realize it's happened, it's too late. I had a close friend that was deeply cut by her church family. She told me about it once, but only once. She never talked through it. She just pushed it down and pushed on. Years later, when another person in a different church did something, it caused all of that to flare up. It caused the infection that had been festering to take off. And she turned away from that church and turned away from one of her closest friends because she had simply been a part of that church. Her original pain, her original wound became infected, and it infected other parts of her life, eventually causing her to determine it was better to amputate her relationships than to deal with the wound. The third thing to do with a wound is to treat the wound, and to be sure that you treat the wound according to the unique properties. My youngest son got a mosquito bite, and he scratched that mosquito bite until he made it bleed. I came in one day and I found my first aid kit had been raided. When I asked him about it, he revealed to me how he had taken care of his wound. He had used gauze and tape and a 4-inch bandage to treat his scratch. Now, each wound will be unique, and even similar wounds will be unique in their own aspects of who it was and even where it was. But you have to treat the wound based on its unique elements. You don't need a 4-inch bandage to cover a scratch. My husband and I are excellent examples of how differences are important to recognize and deal with. There is very little in my husband and I's in our lives that we do the same. We're so opposite that I have often wondered if God put us together because the differences would make us stronger, or because they would serve as better entertainment for God. Because we are so different, we heal different. We heal different from physical wounds, and we heal different from heart wounds. When my husband encounters a cold, he'll go MIA for the weekend because he always puts off his healing until the weekend. He'll spend at least 24 hours straight sleeping, and then he's off again, ready to go. But me, I'm all about charging head first at the cold. I'm jumping into a hot bath, I'm drinking my hot tea, I'm eating the hot soup that's spicy and hot in temperature. I'm going to be breathing in the eucalyptus oil steam. I'm going to be eating garlic, lots and lots and lots of garlic. and I'm going to take in enough vitamin C to stop a tank. Because that's how I tackle the cold. And I tackle the cold until every last symptom is gone. When you are working to heal a wound, whether it's yours or someone that you know, not only do you need to treat the wound, but you have to take the time to know the person and know how they were hurt so you can offer the correct treatment. The fourth thing to do with the wound is to protect it. Yes, you want it to be exposed to the light, but you also want to protect it from being wounded again, or from getting all that stuff in it that's going to wreak that chaos we were talking about before. The world isn't always kind, and too often the world seems to be intentionally cruel, especially when the wounded heart is detected. If you don't protect the wound, then it won't have the chance to heal. When it comes to heart wounds, the only way that you can protect the heart wound is with an influx of positive shielding. In other words, you have to use words and ideas that will provide hope, and then that hope will create the shield that allows for healing. When I was 14, a guy told me I was fat and my pants were ugly. I remember it like it was yesterday. And until a few weeks ago, I hadn't taken the specific action necessary to protect the wound in my heart. Even though I speak positive things and even though I believe in the power of words, I wasn't protecting that wound and allowing it to heal. Now, I'm not perfect. I wasn't perfect then. I'm not perfect now. But nobody else gets to dictate to me what is right or what is wrong for me. I'm the only one that can make that decision. When I embraced those words, I began to protect my wound, and my wound began to heal. You have to provide the protection for the wound specific to that wound and to the weapon that was used in the first place. And finally, you have to maintain the wound if the wound is going to have the chance to heal. That doesn't mean picking at it until it opens up. It means applying the necessary treatments, making sure it remains clean, and protecting it in the right way. When I was in high school, I injured my tendon, And because I didn't protect it the right way, I was out for the full basketball season. I just allowed it to keep getting worse. If you don't treat your wounds correctly, things will just get worse. You have to determine what's going to work for you. You have to determine how things can be done for you. You have to reveal the wound, and then you have to take care of it in a way that allows it to heal. The private wound is the deepest, and it's also impossible to heal a private wound. You need to bring it into the light. You need to expose the wound. You need to allow the light to do its job. Did you know if you have an object that you can move outside, the sun rays will help disinfect it? The power of the sunlight can also be used for household chores. Did you know that a stained piece of white laundry can be brightened and disinfected by spraying the stain with lemon juice or vinegar and then hanging it up in the sun? See, the UV lights, the ones produced by the sun, they are known germ killers. Exposing a wound to the sun allows it to heal. Add in the practice of cleaning, treating, protecting, and maintaining, and you will be on your way to recovery in no time at all. As long as you keep hiding it away, as long as you keep trying to pretend that the wound's not there, ignoring the wound, you will continue to struggle with being okay. And as long as you remain wounded, you will remain off balance, and you cannot live your possibilities if you're off balance. If you want your balance, then you have to make the choice to expose the wound. Dealing with wounds doesn't always seem like a pleasant choice. Cleaning can be painful, exposing the wound can cause hurt, but nothing will hurt more than trying to keep the wound hidden. A wound that remains hidden will get infected, and it will infect everything it encounters. My friend had a dad that got a case of the shingles in his leg, and it ended up affecting his nerves, and he couldn't feel his leg or his foot for several months. So he never noticed he had stubbed his toe and caused a small wound. By the time they gave the wound the attention it needed, it had gotten so infected the toe couldn't be saved. That's an extreme wound situation. But things like that happen not just to the toe. Remember, it was my friend's untreated wound that caused her to amputate her relationships. An unexposed wound will knock you off balance, and without balance, you will never be able to walk out a life in purpose and on purpose. You'll be lucky if you can just stand still. You'll remain stuck where you are, or things are going to get worse without exposing the wound. The only way for things to get better is to expose the wound and start the healing process. If you want to begin your healing process, remember these 5 steps. Acknowledge the wound, clean the wound, treat the wound, protect the wound, maintain the wound. And always remember, each wound is unique. Each person is unique. If you're willing to learn, and if you're willing to expose the wound, then you can have the healing that you want for your life. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Growing Hope, where we're revealing how the healing process is what we need to get the balance we want. And revealing our wounds to the sun, to each other, to ourselves. Just facing the wounds together allows us the strength and encouragement we need to have the healing that we want. If you need help working your way through this process, if you want help finding your balance, email me at contact@growinghoperadio.com. I am here to encourage you, because encouraging you, investing in you, encourages me and dares me to be more. I know that we all have the hurts that are holding us back. Sometimes it's the hurts that we've acknowledged. Sometimes it's hurts we don't even know about. I knew in my life that guy had said those things to me, and I knew that it had hurt me, but I had never treated the wound. And because I never treated the wound, I was never able to start healing. But I'm healing now, and you can too. And I'm here to help you do it. Until next time, remember, I am Kathryn Lang, and I am your Rainbows and Lollipops host, because every day holds a promise of more, and every action contains the power of possibility. It's not about what the world says, or even what the world does. Remember, the strength of hope and encouragement will and does push through the walls and the limits of the world. My prayer is and always will be that the words I share with you are helping establish a foundation of hope that will shatter the delusions of the world around you. Until next time, remember, be blessed and be a blessing.
Thank you for joining us for Growing Hope with Kathryn Lang, where we are sharing hope, encouragement, and inspiration to do more. Visit www.kathrynlang.com to invite Kathryn to be part of your event or to share your own stories of possibility living. Until next time, remember that a seed of hope planted and nurtured will grow up into a world of possibilities.